Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her small office and watched the three suns of Thronix Prime sink below the horizon. The sky turned purple and gold colors that did not exist on Earth. After 3 years on this world, she still found the sunsets beautiful. She still found hope in them. Her office was simple, a desk made from local wood, a chair that was slightly too large for human proportions, a photograph of her daughter Maya in her naval uniform, smiling with pride on graduation day. Elena touched the frame gently. Every morning, it reminded her why she was here so far from home. The Voranthi Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had built monuments that stretched across entire moons. They had ships that could burn worlds to ash, and they looked at humanity the way a giant might look at an ant crawling across its floor. Humanity had achieved faster than light travel only 60 years ago. In galactic terms, they were newborns. The Voranthi found them amusing at best and annoying at worst. Most of the Imperial court did not bother to learn the difference between humans and the dozen other young species that had recently discovered space travel. Elena's job was to change that, one conversation at a time, one handshake at a time, one small agreement at a time. It was slow work, frustrating work, but Anna believed in it with her whole heart. She believed that patience and respect could build bridges across any divide. She believed that even the proudest empire could learn to see humanity as partners rather than insects. Tonight she had a meeting with Trade Minister Vorath. He was a mid-level official, not important by Vanthi standards, but he had shown interest in human agricultural technology. It was a small opening. Elena intended to walk through it. She gathered her documents and stepped out into the corridor. Her security detail, two young Marines named Thompson and Rivera, fell into step beside her. They wore formal uniforms instead of combat gear. Elena had insisted on this. She wanted to project peace, not threat. The Imperial Administrative Complex was vast. Ceilings rose 50 m high, designed for Vanthi proportions. The Voranthi themselves stood nearly 3 m tall, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with their emotions. When they were calm, they appeared silver. When angry, they turned deep crimson. Elena had learned to read these colors like a language. She passed groups of Voranthi officials who barely glanced at her. Few sneered openly. One made a gesture that she knew was deeply insulting. She pretended not to notice. She had endured worse. The mission mattered more than her pride. Trade Minister Vorath was waiting in a conference room. He was old by Vanthi standards, his skin a faded gray that spoke of centuries of life. But his eyes were sharp and curious. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, using her name correctly. Most Vanthi did not bother. Thank you for meeting with me. The honor is mine, Minister. Ella bowed in the Vanthi fashion, her right hand pressed to her chest. I brought the agricultural data you requested. They talked for 2 hours. Vorath asked intelligent questions about Earth's vertical farming techniques. Elena explained how humanity had learned to feed 10 billion people on a planet with limited arable land. The minister seemed genuinely interested. Your species is resourceful, Vorath said at the end. I will admit, I did not expect this when I first heard of humans. Elena smiled. We have learned to make the most of what we Perhaps there is more to discuss. I will contact you next week. It was not a trade agreement. It was not even a promise, but it was progress. Elena felt the warmth of small victory as she walked back to her office. She never made it there. The soldiers appeared from side corridors, 20 of them wearing the black armor of the Imperial Security Force. They moved with the precision of hunters who had cornered their prey. Thompson and Rivera reached for their sidearms. Elena stopped them with a raised hand. Stand down, she said. Quietly, we are diplomats. We have immunity. A Voranthi officer stepped forward. His skin was deep red. Elena recognized him from intelligence briefings. High Commander Sorvax, head of the Imperial Security Force and close advisor to Emperor Malvoisix. Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Sorvax said. His voice was cold and flat. You are under arrest for espionage against the Vanthi Empire. Elena kept her voice steady. There must be some mistake, High Commander. I have engaged in no espionage. My mission here is purely diplomatic. We have evidence. Sorvax gestured, and a soldier produced a data tablet. Communications between your office and human military intelligence. Detailed reports on Imperial fleet movements. Stolen technical specifications. Elena recognized the tactic immediately. Fabricated evidence. She had seen it used against other species who fell out of Imperial favor, but she had never imagined it would be used against humanity. This evidence is false, she said. I demand to speak with my government. I demand a proper hearing. Sorvax's mouth twisted into something that was not quite a smile. You will have your hearing, Ambassador. The Emperor himself will preside. They took her weapons. They took her communicator. They bound her hands with energy restraints that burned against her skin. Thompson and Rivera were held at gunpoint, forced to watch as soldiers dragged their ambassador away. Contact Earth. Elena called to them as she was pulled through the corridor. Tell them what happened. Tell my I love her. The trial took place in the Imperial Plaza, broadcast across the Empire. Elena stood on a platform before thousands of Varanti citizens. Above her, Emperor Malvos the Ninth watched from his floating throne. The Emperor was ancient. His skin had faded to pure white, a sign of extreme age. He had ruled for 800 years. He had crushed rebellions and conquered star systems and watched entire species fade into extinction. Humanity was nothing to him, a footnote in his endless reign. A prosecutor presented the fabricated evidence. Elena was not allowed to speak in her own defense. She was not allowed to call witnesses. She was not allowed to contact her government. Trial lasted for minutes. Elena Vasquez, the Emperor declared, his voice echoing across the plaza, you are found guilty of espionage against the Vanthi Empire. The sentence is death. It will be carried out immediately. Elena looked up at the Emperor. She did not beg. She did not plead. She stood straight and met his gaze with steady eyes. I came here in peace, she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. I came here to build bridges between our peoples. What you do today will not be forgotten. Malvis laughed. The sound was harsh and dismissive. Your species will forget within a generation. Human, you are insects. Your memories are short, and your lives are shorter. They gave her one final transmission, a small mercy. They called it a chance to say goodbye. Elena looked into the camera. and saw in her mind's eye her daughter's face. Maya, she said, I'm sorry, I won't be coming home. I want you to know that I don't regret anything. I believed in peace. I still believe in it. Don't let what happens to me change who you are. Be strong, be kind, be better than the hatred that took me from you. I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. The transmission ended. They executed her in the plaza in front of thousands of cheering Vanthi. The Emperor watched with cold satisfaction. High Commander Sorvek stood at his side, his skin silver with triumph. Humanity received the news 6 hours later. For 3 days the galaxy waited. The Voranthi expected rage. They expected threats. They expected a small human fleet to arrive, which they would crush as an example to other young species. Instead, humanity went silent. Every human vessel in Verthi space turned and left within 72 hours. Trade agreements were abandoned, communication channels closed, embassies emptied. No threats, no demands, no words at all. Emperor Malleus addressed his court. With amusement, they flee like prey animals, he declared. As I predicted, young species lacked the stomach for confrontation. Within a year they will send new ambassadors begging for forgiveness. We will make them gravel. Appropriately, the court laughed. High Commander Sorvax was praised for his handling of the human problem. Promotions were given, celebrations were held. The Vanthi Empire continued as it always had, confident, powerful, sir, of its dominance deep within Earth's military command center. A different scene unfolded. Admiral Chenwei stood before a wall of screens showing fleet positions across 12 star systems. These were ships the galaxy did not know existed, built in secret shipyards, hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant moons, crewed by men and women who had trained for years for a war they hoped would never come. Ambassador Vasquez's service record glowed on a screen beside her. 20 years of diplomatic service, commendations for bravery, letters of appreciation from 3 different presidents, a photograph of her at Maya's graduation, both of them smiling. Admiral Chen studied the photograph for a long moment. Elelina Vasquez had believed in peace. She had given her life for that belief. Begin protocol. Remembrance, Admiral Chen said quietly. Around her, officers moved to their stations, communications encrypted, fleet orders distributed. A machine that had been preparing for decades began to turn. They wanted our attention. The Admiral continued, her voice hard and cold. Now they have it. Ambassador Vasquez deserved better than this galaxy gave her. We cannot give her justice, but we can give her an answer. She turned to face her staff. The V6 months passed like water flowing through open fingers. The Voranthi Empire expanded into the territories humanity had abandoned. Trade stations that once flew Earth's flag now bore the imperial seal. Mining operations that humans had built were seized and redistributed to loyal Varanthi corporations. The message was clear to everyone watching. Humanity had run away and the strong had claimed what the weak left behind. Emperor Malvus the IX addressed the Galactic Council with triumph in his voice. Let this be a lesson to all young species. He declared, the Voranthi Empire does not tolerate disrespect. Those who challenge us will be crushed. Those who submit will be permitted to serve. The other species listened carefully. The Krenian, whose home world had been conquered 3 centuries ago, kept their heads bowed, the Morith collective who paid tribute to the empire every year, murmured agreement. The dozen minor species who existed at the empire's pleasure said nothing at all, only the Vanny ambassador, an ancient creature with too many eyes, watched the proceedings with something like doubt. The Vanny had long memories. They remembered other empires that had celebrated too early. High Commander Sorvax enjoyed his promotion. He was now High Regent Sorvax, second only to the Emperor himself. He had proven his worth by eliminating the human threat before it could grow. The Emperor rewarded loyalty, and Sorvax had been very loyal. Indeed, he moved into larger quarters in the Imperial Palace. He acquired servants and advisors and all the symbols of power. He attended court functions where nobles praised his wisdom. He accepted their praise with false modesty. The human problem was solved. Life continued as normal. Except that strange things began happening at the edges of Vanthi space. It started with a scout ship in the outer reaches. The vessel was performing routine patrol when it simply vanished. No distress signal, no emergency beacon. One moment it appeared on tracking systems, and the next moment it was gone. Imperial Command classified the incident as equipment failure. Ships were old. Systems broke down. These things happened. Then a sensor station in the Cometh sector went dark. 47 personnel gone without a trace. The station itself remained intact but empty. Food sat half-eaten on tables. Personal belongings remained in quarters. It was as if everyone had simply stood up and walked into the void. Then a supply convoy carrying weapons to a frontier garrison disappeared. 12 ships, 4,000 crew members, enough firepower to conquer a small planet, gone. Imperial intelligence began investigating. They sent their best agents to the affected regions. The agents found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no evidence of battle, just empty space where ships and stations should have been. Pirates declared the official reports mechanical failure, navigation errors, but the disappearances continued. One ship here, a station there, always at the edges, always in places where response times were slow and witnesses were few. Young intelligence officer named Subcommander Kethis noticed something that her superiors had missed. She was young for her position, only 80 years old. She had sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had earned her rank through ability rather than connections, which meant she had no powerful friends to protect her. Kethis spread a star map across her desk and marked every disappearance. She added dates and times. She calculated distances and trajectories. She looked for patterns that others had not thought to seek. Pattern was there, hidden in the chaos. The disappearances were not random. They formed a ring around Varancy space. Specifically, they formed a ring around the early warning network that protected the Imperial core worlds. Someone was systematically blinding the Empire, one sensor at a time. Kethis brought her findings to her superior, Commander Vithan. He was an old soldier with silver skin and tired eyes. He listened to her report with growing impatience. You are suggesting, he said slowly, that the humans are responsible for this. The pattern fits, Commander. They withdrew 6 months ago. They have had time to prepare. They are eliminating our ability to detect incoming threats. Vithan laughed. It was not a kind sound. The humans are cowards who fled at the first sign of conflict. They do not have the ships to challenge us. They do not have the technology to evade our sensors. They are prey animals, hiding in whatever hole they crawled into. Commander, the evidence suggests. The evidence suggests nothing. Veethan's skin flickered orange with annoyance. You are seeing shadows, Sub-Commander. The disappearances are coincidence. Pirates and equipment failure and bad luck, nothing more. But if I am right, you are not right, and if you continue spreading fear among the ranks, I will have you reassigned to waste processing on a mining colony. Am I understood? Q's understood perfectly. She bowed her head and left the commander's office. She did not stop investigating. She simply stopped telling anyone what she found. Far from Varanthi space, in a region of dead stars that no Imperial map bothered to chart, Lieutenant Commander Maya Vasquez reviewed her mission objectives. She commanded a special operations unit called Shadow 7. 12 operators, all volunteers. All of them had lost someone to Varani aggression. Her second in command, Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, had watched his brother's colony ship destroyed by Imperial Customs vessels for carrying unauthorized cargo. Their pilot, Lieutenant Park, had survived the destruction of a human research station that the Vanthi had declared to close to their border. Every member of Shadow 7 had a story. Every story ended in loss. Maya's story was broadcast across the galaxy. Her mother's execution was played on loop for weeks, a warning to other species who might challenge Imperial authority. Maya had watched the recording once. She would never watch it again. Target acquired, Park announced. From the pilot's seat, sensor relay. Station K-Mouth 7, minimal crew, standard defenses. Maya studied the tactical display. The station hung in space like a metal flower. Its sensor dishes pointed outward toward the void. Station was part of the early warning network. When it died, the Empire would lose another set of eyes. Standard approach, Maya ordered. No survivors who can report our capabilities, but no unnecessary deaths either. We are soldiers, not murderers. Rodriguez nodded. Rules of engagement understood. Commander, the ship was small and fast, and built with technology the Varanthi did not know existed. Human engineers had spent decades developing stealth systems that could slip through Imperial sensors like ghosts through walls. The Varanthi believed humans were primitive because humans had let them believe it. The approach took 3 hours. They drifted on minimal power, using the gravity of nearby moons to mask their trajectory. When they were close enough, they launched. The assault lasted for minutes. Maya led the breach personally. She moved through the station's corridors with cold efficiency, her rifle humming in her hands. Vanthi guards fell before they could raise alarms. Technicians surrendered when they saw the human soldiers emerging from impossible shadow. Station secured. Rodriguez reported 18 prisoners, no casualties on our side. Maya stood before the captured crew. They looked at her with terror. They had been told humans were weak and cowardly. They had been told humans would never dare challenge the Empire. You will be transported to a holding facility. Maya told them, you will be treated according to the laws of war. When this conflict ends, you will be returned to your people. A young Varani technician spoke up, his voice trembling. Why are you doing this? Maya thought of her mother standing in the Imperial Plaza. She Thought of the 4-minute trial and the transmission that ended soon, because someone has to teach your empire that actions have consequences, she said, and we are the teachers. They evacuated the prisoners and destroyed the station. Another gap in the sensor network. Another step toward the reckoning that was coming across Vanthi space. Dozens of similar operations were underway. Human special forces teams struck targets that the Empire did not know were vulnerable. They captured intelligence. They destroyed infrastructure. They mapped every fleet, position, and military installation. Vanthi saw random misfortune. The humans were building a picture of exactly how to bring the Empire to its knees. On Thrunks Prime, Subcommander clears throat. Kethis continued her secret investigation. She gathered data from classified sources. She interviewed survivors of attacks that were officially labeled accidents. She built a file that grew thicker every day. The pattern was undeniable. Now the disappearances were accelerating. The early warning network was being systematically dismantled, and every gap that appeared pointed inward toward the Imperial Core. Keith requested a meeting with High Regent Sorvex himself. It took weeks to arrange. When she finally stood before him, she presented her evidence with the calm precision of someone who knew she was right. Sorvex listened with growing irritation. His skin shifted through shades of orange and red. "You are telling me," he said, when she finished, "that the humans we defeated 6 months ago are secretly waging war against us, that they have technology we cannot detect, that they are preparing an attack we cannot see coming?" "Yes, High Regent, the evidence is clear." Sorvex stood. He towered over her, his forearms crossed in a gesture of contempt. "The evidence shows that you are a coward and a fool, Subcommander. The humans are nothing. They have always been nothing. They will always be nothing. And if you spread this fear-mongering beyond this room, I wolf." Attack began at exactly midnight, measured by Thrunks Prime Standard Time. Admiral Cheney had chosen the art deliberately. Midnight was a human concept, but it carried weight across cultures. The ending of one day and the beginning of another, the moment when darkness was deepest and light seemed furthest away. For the Varanthi Empire, it would be both. In 17 star systems, simultaneously, human fleets emerged from hidden positions. They appeared on Varanthi sensors like ghosts, becoming solid, materializing in places where no ships should have been able to hide. The element of surprise was total. The early warning network that should have given hours of advance notice had been torn apart piece by piece over 6 months of patient work. Fleet Admiral Corps, commander of the 3rd Imperial Armada, was the first to die. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was struck by weapons that phased through shields as if they did not exist. The ship's reactor went critical in seconds. Core had time to transmit one word before the explosion consumed him. Impossible, but it was not impossible. It was simply unexpected. The Varanthi had believed their shields were impenetrable. They had believed their sensors were all-seeing. They had believed that no young species could challenge their 12,000 years of military supremacy. They were wrong about all of it. That human ships moved through space with impossible grace. Their drives allowed maneuvers that Vanthi tactical computers could not predict. They struck and vanished, reappeared in different positions, struck again. The Imperial Fleet designed to crush enemies through overwhelming firepower found itself. Fighting shadows, Admiral Chen's flagship, the Elena Vasquez, led the assault on Thronix Prime itself. The ship was named in honor of the fallen ambassador, and it fought with a fury that matched its namesake's quiet determination. Human crews had volunteered for this mission, knowing many would not return. They fought anyway because some things mattered more than survival. Commander Maya Vasquez watched the battle from the bridge of her assault carrier. Shadow 7 had completed its mission, and now Maya had a new role. She commanded the Marine forces that would land on Thronix Prime once the orbital defenses fell. Orbital Platform 7 is down, her tactical officer reported. Platform 8 is taking heavy fire. Enemy fleet elements attempting to regroup at coordinates. The report cut off as another Vanthi battle group dissolved under human weapons fire. The Elena Vasquez's main gun spoke, and a cruiser that had served the Empire for 300 years became an expanding cloud of debris. Maya felt no joy in the destruction. She felt no triumph in the death. She felt only the cold weight of necessity. This had to happen. Voranthi Empire had made it necessary when they murdered her mother in a plaza for a crime she did not commit. On Thronix Prime, High Regent Sorvex coordinated the defense from the Imperial War Room. His skin had gone pure crimson with rage, brighter than anyone had ever seen. He screamed orders at subordinates who were already doing everything they could. How did they get so close? How did they break through our sensors? I want answers. No one had answers. The answers had been provided months ago by Subcommander Kethis, and they had been ignored. Servax threw everything into the defense reserve. Fleets were activated. Civilian vessels were pressed into service. Planetary defense batteries fired continuously, their beams cutting across the sky like angry gods. It was not enough. The human fleet was larger than anyone had imagined. Intelligence reports had estimated Earth's total naval strength at 20,000 vessels. The reality was 10 times that number. Ships built in hidden shipyards across a dozen secret colonies. Technology developed in research stations that the Voranthi had never known existed. Humanity had been preparing for this war since the day they first encountered the Voranthi Empire. They had seen the cruelty. They had seen the arrogance. They had known with the certainty of prey that recognizes a predator that conflict was inevitable. Ambassador Vasquez had hoped to prevent it. She had died trying. Now her daughter was finishing what she could not. The battle lasted 47 hours. The Voranthi fought with the desperation of those who had never tasted defeat. They destroyed human ships. They killed human crews. Every victory they claimed cost the Empire ships it could not replace. For every human vessel that fell, 10 Vanthi ships burned. Subcommander Kethis experienced the battle from a monitoring station in the planet's southern hemisphere. She watched the sky fill with fire and felt Clear's throat, something strange in her chest. It might have been fear. It might have been vindication. She had warned them. She had shown them the evidence. They had laughed at her and threatened her career. Now the evidence was burning its way through the Imperial fleet. Her station fell on the second day. Human Marines breached the outer defenses at dawn. Kays listened to the reports of fighting in the corridors, each update bringing the enemy closer. She gathered her personal files and prepared for death. The door to her office exploded. Inward, Keith raised her sidearm, but she was not a combat officer. Her hands shook too much to aim properly. A human soldier entered. He was tall for his species, with dark skin and tired eyes. He wore armor that was scarred from recent fighting. His rifle was pointed at her chest. "Drop the weapon," he said, in accented Varanthi. "Drop it now." Kethis let the gun fall. There was no point in dying for nothing. The soldier kicked the weapon away and signaled to his team. Other humans entered, securing the room. They were efficient and professional. They did not shoot her. "You are a prisoner of war," the soldier told her. "You will be treated according to the laws of war. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." Kia stared at him. "I expected you to kill me." "Why?" "Because we killed your ambassador. Because we have killed your people for decades. Because that is what victors do." The soldier studied her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes that she could not identify. "We are not your empire," he said finally. "We do not murder prisoners." He offered her container of water. It was a simple gesture, almost absurd in the context of battle. Kethis took it with trembling hands. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we win this war, and then we figure out what comes next." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Human forces captured installations and accepted surrenders. They established field hospitals that treated Varanthi wounded. Alongside their own, they distributed food and water to civilian populations who expected slaughter. The slaughter did not come. Word spread among the Vanthi defenders. The humans were not butchers. The humans were not monsters. They killed when they had to. But they did not kill for pleasure or revenge. Soldiers who surrendered were treated with dignity. It was confusing. It was terrifying in its own way. The Varanthi understood cruelty. They did not understand mercy. By the third day, the orbital defenses of Thronx Prime had been reduced to debris. The human fleet controlled the space above the imperial capital. Ground forces held the major cities. The war in any practical sense was over, but Emperor Malvois the 9th refused to surrender. He had retreated to the imperial palace, a fortress that had stood for 10,000 years. Its walls were made of materials that could withstand orbital bombardment. Its shields had never been breached. Its defenses had been designed by the greatest military minds of 50 generations. The emperor sat on his throne, surrounded by his most loyal guards. His skin had gone pure white with age and fury. He would not yield. He would not bend. He would die as he had lived, supreme and unbroken. Sorvek stood at his side, still crimson with rage. "We can hold the palace," he insisted. "They cannot break through our shields. We simply have to wait for relief fleets from the outer colonies. Wait for our allies to what?" "Allies?" Malfoy asked quietly. "What relief fleets? The outer colonies have surrendered. Our allies have abandoned us. The Krenian are celebrating in the streets of their home world. Then we die fighting. We die as Vanthi warriors." Malvis laughed. It was a hollow sound, empty of the contempt he had shown 6 months ago. "Yes, we die, but first I want to understand something." He activated a communication channel. It connected to the human flagship. Admiral Cheney's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of days without Sleep, but her gaze was steady and cold. Emperor Malloys, she said, I wondered when you would call Admiral Chen. I congratulate you on your victory. It is unprecedented in our history. I do not want your congratulations. I want your surrender. Malvo leaned forward on his throne. First, tell me how did you hide such a fleet? How did you develop such weapons? How did you deceive our intelligence so completely? Shen, consider the question. We hid because you did not bother to look. We developed weapons because we knew from the day we met you that we would eventually need them. We deceived your intelligence because your intelligence assumed we were insects, and insects are not worth watching closely. You let us believe you were weak. We were weak. 60 years ago we could not have fought you, so we pretended to be weaker than we were, and we prepared and we waited. Ambassador Vasquez hoped we would never need what we built. She hoped peace was. Admiral Chen Wei landed on Thronk's Prime 3 days after the orbital defenses fell. She came with a small delegation, 50 Marines in formal uniforms, a handful of diplomatic staff who had worked with Ambassador Vasquez, and Lieutenant Commander Maya Vasquez, who had requested permission to be part of the landing party. Chen had hesitated before grounding that request. Maya had every reason to want revenge. Her mother had been murdered in a plaza not far from where they would land. Allowing her to walk those streets seemed like inviting disaster, but Maya had looked at her with steady eyes. I need to see it, she had said. I need to stand where she stood, otherwise it will haunt me forever. So Chen agreed, and now they descended through the atmosphere. Together, the shuttle passed over cities that had been conquered without destruction. Human forces held the major population centers, but they had avoided civilian casualties whenever possible. The Voranthi watched their descent from windows and streets, millions of eyes tracking the human shuttle as it approached the imperial palace. Many expected death to follow. They had been told for generations that humans were primitive savages who would slaughter anyone they defeated. The shuttle landed in the palace courtyard. Shen stepped out first, followed by her delegation. The Vanthi palace guards watched them with weapons lowered but not surrendered, a fragile peace held in place by mutual exhaustion. Emperor Malvois waited at the entrance to the palace. He had dressed in formal robes, the white fabric matching his ancient skin. He looked smaller than he had appeared in broadcasts, older, more tired. Beside him stood High Regent Sorvax. His skin was silver now, carefully controlled, but his eyes burned with hatred that no discipline could hide. Admiral Chen Malvois said, "Welcome to THR Prime, Emperor Malfoys." Chen did not bow. "We have much to discuss." They walked through corridors that had been designed to humble visitors. Ceilings stretched into darkness above. Statues of past emperors lined the walls, each one larger than life. The message was clear: the Vanthi were great and all others were small. The humans walked through without looking up. They entered a conference chamber where the terms of surrender would be negotiated. Chen sat at one end of the table. Malvois sat at the other. Their staffs arranged themselves along the sides. Maya stood at the back of the room. She watched Sorvex with eyes that revealed nothing. "Before we begin," Chen said, "I want to make one thing clear. We did not come here to destroy your empire. We did not come here to enslave your people. We came here to deliver a message, and to ensure that message is Never forgotten, Malfoy's inclined his head. And what message is that? That humanity is not to be taken lightly. That our diplomats are not to be murdered for political theater. That our peaceful intentions are not weakness but choice. Chen leaned forward. Ambassador Vasquez believed in building bridges between our peoples. She died for that belief. We are here to honor her memory by creating something that will prevent her death from being repeated. You wish to punish us. We wish to change you. Punishment is a small part of that. The negotiations lasted 12 days. Outside the palace, human forces established order. Without cruelty, they set up aid stations that distributed food to civilians. Medical teams treated anyone who needed care regardless of species. Engineers began restoring power to districts that had been damaged in the fighting. The Voranthi population watched in confusion. They had been prepared for massacre. They had been prepared for slavery. They had not been prepared for soldiers who shared their rations with hungry children. Words spread through the planet and then through the empire. The humans were not butchers. The humans did not slaughter the defeated. They were harsh with soldiers who resisted, but gentle with those who surrendered. They killed when they had to, but seemed to take no pleasure in it. Subcommander Kethis was released from detention on the 5th day. Her human captors had treated her well. They had given her food and water and medical care for a minor injury. They had asked her questions about the disposition of Vanthi forces, and she had answered honestly, seeing no point in deception. On her release, she was offered a choice. She could return to her quarters and wait for the negotiations to conclude, or she could assist the human occupation forces in establishing contact with Vanthi civilians. She chose to assist. She was not sure why, perhaps because the humans had shown her something she had not expected, perhaps because she wanted to understand these strange creatures who conquered with one hand and healed with the other. She worked alongside human soldiers who were younger than her grandchildren. They struggled with the Vanthi language. They made cultural mistakes that would have been insulting under other circumstances, but they tried. They listened when she corrected them. They thanked her for her help. One evening, a human captain named Tors sat with her during a meal break. He was young and earnest, with hands that were callous from manual labor. Can I ask you something? He said. Q's nodded. When your empire conquered other species, what happened to them? Q's considered the question carefully. Those who submitted were allowed to serve. Those who resisted were destroyed. Their worlds were claimed. Their people were scattered. She paused. The Krenian were a proud people once. Now they are servants in our households. Tors nodded slowly. And you think that is how things should be? The strong rule, the weak serve. I thought so. It is what I was taught. It is what every Vanthi is taught from birth. Thurs looked at the human soldiers sharing food with Voranthi civilians nearby. But you are strong. You have defeated us completely. And you do not make us serve. No, why? Tors thought about it. Because my grandmother told me something when I was young. She said that power is a tool, not a purpose. You use power to build things, not to break them. And if all you do with power is hurt people weaker than you are not strong. You are just a bully. Q's turned this over in her mind. Your grandmother was wise. She was a teacher, 3rd grade, never conquered anything except the hearts of her students. Tor smiled sadly. She died last year. I like to think she would be proud of how we are handling this in the palace. The negotiations continued. Chen demanded justice for Ambassador Vasquez. She demanded a trial for those responsible for the murder. She demanded reforms to the imperial government that would prevent similar crimes in the future. She demanded reparations for the species the Vanthi had oppressed. Malvois resisted where he could. He argued for leniency. He tried to protect his closest allies. He fought to preserve what remained of his power. But he was not negotiating from strength. His fleets were destroyed. His armies were defeated. His allies had abandoned him. He could argue, but he could not refuse. Servax watched the negotiations with growing desperation. He understood what was happening. The humans were not just defeating the empire, they were changing it. They were forcing reforms that would weaken the power structure. He had spent his entire life climbing, and he was the one who had started it all. He had ordered the execution of Ambassador Vasquez. He had fabricated the evidence. He had convinced the emperor that killing a human diplomat would show strength. Now, that decision was destroying everything he had built. On the 10th day, Maya Vasquez requested permission to leave the negotiations temporarily. Shen granted it with a warning: be careful and remember who you are. Maya walked through the streets of the capital with 2 Marines as escort. She drew stares from Vanthi civilians who had seen her image on news broadcasts, the daughter of the murdered ambassador, the soldier who led the assault teams that brought down the empire's defenses. She found the imperial plaza without difficulty. It was a vast open space surrounded by government buildings. In the center stood a platform where public announcements were made, where executions were carried out. Maya walked to the platform. She climbed the steps. She stood in the exact spot where her mother had stood 7 months ago. Plaza was quiet. Vanthi, who had been passing through, stopped to watch. Human soldiers maintained a respectful distance. Maya closed her eyes. She remembered her mother's final transmission, the calm voice, the gentle words, the love that had no room for hatred even in the face of death. Be strong, be kind, be better than the hatred that took me from you. Maya opened her eyes. A young Verante child had approached the platform. She was small, barely reaching Mia's waist. Her skin was pale blue with curiosity. She looked up at the human with wide eyes. You are the daughter, the child said, of the human they killed. Maya nodded. Are you going to kill us now? Maya looked at the child for a long moment. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small package. Inside was chocolate, real chocolate from Earth, precious and rare. In this part of the galaxy. She knelt down and offered it to the child. No, she said, I am not going to kill anyone. The child took the chocolate with trembling hands. She tasted it carefully, her expression shifting to wonder at the sweetness. Maya stood and walked away. She did not look back. She did not need to. She had stood where her mother stood. She had faced the choice her mother would have faced, and she had chosen as her mother would have chosen. On the 12th day, the negotiations concluded. Emperor Malvas agreed to stand trial before a galactic tribunal. High Regent Sorvax would face separate charges for his role in Ambassador Vasquez's murder. The Voranthi Empire would undergo 3 months had passed since the fall of the Vanthi Empire. The galaxy had changed, trade routes that had been controlled by imperial forces now flowed freely. Species that had lived under Varante domination for centuries began to rediscover their own voices. Old grudges resurfaced, old wounds reopened. The careful order of 12,000 years was crumbling, and something new was struggling to be born. The trial of Emperor Malos I-9th in High Regent Sorvex took place on a station orbiting a neutral world. The Galactic Tribunal had been hastily assembled from judges representing 27 species. Most of them had suffered under Vanthi rule. None of them had imagined sitting in judgment over an emperor who had seemed untouchable just months ago. Admiral Cheney attended as a witness. She sat in the gallery and watched the proceedings with tired eyes. The war was over, but peace was proving to be harder than battle. Lieutenant Commander Maya Vasquez sat beside her. She had been promoted 3 times since the conflict ended. The daughter of the murdered ambassador, the soldier who had captured the man responsible for her mother's death without taking revenge. She had become a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. The prosecution presented its case methodically. Evidence of war, crimes spanning centuries, documentation of murdered diplomats and destroyed civilizations, testimony from survivors of Vanthi aggression who spoke of horrors that the comfortable and powerful had chosen to ignore. Ambassador Vasquez's execution was presented in detail. The fabricated evidence, the 4-minute trial, the final transmission that had been broadcast across the empire as a warning. The gallery watched in silence. Some wept, some sat frozen with anger. Maya listened without expression. She had seen the recording. She knew every word. She did not need to hear it again. Malvoy sat in the defendant's box with the calm of someone who had accepted his fate. His skin had gone gray. Resignation. He did not protest the charges. He did not claim innocence. He simply listened and waited. Sorvax was different. He raged against his restraints. He screamed accusations at the tribunal. He called them puppets and fools and traitors to the natural order. His skin shifted through color so rapidly that medical officers had to be called to ensure he was not suffering a stroke. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witnesses testified about atrocities that had been buried for generations. Documents were presented that revealed the calculated cruelty of imperial policy. The Voranthi had not conquered through strength alone. They had conquered through terror, through systematic destruction of any hope of resistance. The galaxy watched. Trillions of beings across thousands of worlds followed the proceedings. For the first time in memory, the victims had a voice. For the first time, the powerful faced judgment. On the final day of testimony, Admiral Chen was called to speak. She walked to the witness stand. With measured steps, the judges watched her with expressions that mixed respect and weariness. Admiral Chen, the lead judge, began. You commanded the human forces that defeated the Voranthi Empire. Your fleets destroyed 40,000 Imperial warships. Your soldiers occupied the Imperial capital. You had the power to do whatever you wished to. They defeated. Yes, why did you choose restraint? Shen considered the question. The gallery leaned forward, waiting. Ambassador Elena Vasquez believed that peace was possible, Chen said finally. She believed that even the proudest Empire could learn to see others as partners rather than prey she died for. That belief she paused when she died. Humanity had a choice. We could have become what the Vanthi expected us to be, savages, monsters, creatures driven by rage and revenge, but you did not. No, because Ambassador Vasquez deserved better than to be used as an excuse for atrocity, because the billions of Varanti civilians who had no part in her murder deserved better than to die for their leader crimes. Chen's voice hardened slightly, and because humanity had to show the galaxy what we are not. Through words, through actions, and what is humanity, Admiral? Chen met the judge's gaze directly. We are a species capable of terrible violence, we proved that, but we are also a species capable of choosing mercy when we have the power to destroy. We proved that too. She looked at the defendant's box where Malvi sat watching her. The Varanthi Empire ruled through fear. They believed that strength meant cruelty, that power meant domination. We wanted to show them another way. The judges deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the gallery was packed to capacity. Representatives from species across the galaxy waited for the verdict that would shape the future. High Regent Sorvex was found guilty of war crimes, crimes against sentient beings, and the murder of Ambassador Alelina Vasquez. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a penal station where he would spend his remaining years in a small cell, stripped of all power and dignity. Emperor Malvos the 9th was found guilty of enabling and perpetuating a system of oppression that had caused immeasurable suffering. He was stripped of all titles and authority and sentenced to exile on a distant world, where he would live out his days as an ordinary citizen of the empire he had once ruled. Neither was executed. The tribunal had considered death sentences. They had been rejected at the insistence of the human delegation. Ambassador Vasquez opposed capital punishment. Admiral Chen had argued she believed that even the worst criminals deserved the chance to face the consequences of their actions, to live with what they had done. Clear his throat. Executing these men would make martyrs of them. Letting them live makes them examples of justice rather than vengeance. The galaxy accepted the verdicts with a mixture of satisfaction and surprise. The Varanthi had expected their leaders to be killed. The mercy shown was almost more unsettling than cruelty would have been. In the months that followed, the new order took shape. The Varanthi Empire was reformed into the Varanthi Republic. A constitution was written that guaranteed rights to all citizens, regardless of species. Elections were held for the first time in 12,000 years. Subcommander Cathis, who had warned her superiors about the human threat and been ignored, emerged as a leader of the reform movement. She spoke openly about her experiences with human soldiers, about the mercy shown to prisoners and civilians. She argued that the old ways had led to ruin, and only change could prevent future catastrophe. Her message found receptive ears. Young Vanthi, who had grown up under imperial propaganda, saw the truth with their own eyes. Human soldiers shared meals with their children. Human doctors healed their wounded. Human engineers helped rebuild what war had destroyed. The species that had been conquered by the Varanthi began to reclaim their independence. The Krenian, who had been servants for 300 years, established their own government and began rebuilding their culture. The Morath Collective stopped paying tribute and redirected those resources to their own development. Other species watched humanity's actions and drew their own conclusions. The Villani, oldest of the spacefaring races, sent a formal embassy to Earth for the first time in their history. Dozens of minor species petitioned for alliance or protection. Admiral Chen, exhausted by war and diplomacy, quietly retired. She had done what was necessary. She had no desire for the praise that followed. Maya Vasquez received a new assignment. She stood before Admiral Chen's successor. A formal ceremony broadcast across human space. The new admiral presented her with a commission and a responsibility that made her heart ache. Lieutenant Commander Maya Vasquez, you are hereby assigned as Earth's ambassador to the Voranthi Republic. Maya accepted the commission in her mother's name. She arrived on Thronx Prime on a rainy morning. The shuttle landed in the same courtyard where she had walked 3 months earlier, seeking the place of her mother's death. Now she walked those steps as a diplomat, carrying the weight of everything her mother had believed. The Imperial Plaza had been renamed Vasquez Square. A statue stood in the center, carved from stone that caught the light of 3 suns. Elena Vasquez, her hand extended in greeting, her face calm and kind. The monument bore a simple inscription. She believed in peace. May we be worthy of her faith. Maya stood before the statue for a long time. Rain fell gently around her, washing the stone clean. Vanthi civilians passed through the square on their daily business. Children of multiple species played beneath the statue's shadow. One of them, a young Vanthi girl with pale blue skin, approached Maya. She looked up at the ambassador with curious eyes. You are her daughter, the girl said. The one who gave me chocolate. Maya smiled. She remembered in the midst of war she had knelt before this child and offered sweetness instead of vengeance. I am. My mother says you are here to help us. Is that true? Maya looked at the statue, at her mother's kind face, at the hand extended in greeting that had been rejected and punished with death. Yes, she said, that is why I am here. She turned and walked toward the embassy building. There was work to do, negotiations to conduct, relationships to build, all the slow, patient labor that her mother had believed in and died. For behind her, the children continued playing in Vasquez Square, human and Varanthi and Krenian together.